Hey there, welcome to the My Risk Advisor podcast. This podcast is for anyone in the financial planning ecosystem with a focus on life risk insurance. I'm your host, Phil Thompson, Director and Financial Advisor at Sky Wealth, and I've been on a business journey over the last few years going from a struggling holistic advice firm with one staff member, considering packing it all in, to pivot the business now to being one of Australia's leading specialist insurance advice firms with over 7 advisors, 30 team members, and helping hundreds of clients every single year get important insurance cover in place. I am unashamed to say that this podcast is so I can continue to grow and develop as an advisor and a business owner as I interview some incredibly smart individuals. So keep on listening so you can learn alongside me. So today I've got Kylie Denton, the founder and director of Performance Advisory Group. I want to talk about your work at Performance Advisory Group. I want to talk about kind of like leadership training and sales coaching and, working with advisors. But before we get into all of that, I just want to start with kind of understanding your journey in and around advice.
Yeah, sure. It's been a long journey, Phil. I've been in the industry now for 34 years. I started in late 1989, in November 1989. And I started then, but actually I first understood what we as an industry do when I was 12 years old. So at the age of 12, my father was diagnosed with bowel cancer. And so this was in the late 70s that my father was diagnosed with bowel cancer. And for those listeners that have been on this journey for as long as me, they will remember the old AMP, MLC life agents that used to sell people life insurance. And my dad was smart enough to take life insurance back then. Now, that by no means left us millionaires, but what it did do was it allowed my mum, when my father passed away, to pay off the mortgage and keep a roof over our head. It also allowed me and my 6 brothers and sisters to stay in the house that my dad built for us. And it allowed my mum to take some time off and to just figure out, I'm sure, how she was going to bring up 6 kids by herself at the age of 42. And I just remember being so forever grateful for that life agent that had done that for us. And as soon as I could get a job, Phil, I went and got a job in financial services. Now, that's not, most of the time people don't strive to get a job in financial services. Most of the people I talk to go, oh man, I just fell into it. Someone offered me a job and I got it. But mine was real purpose driven, and I really made it my mission to help as many people as I could to have the future that I think every Australian deserves. And that is to have life insurance or disability insurance at a time when they need it the most. But also just as important is to be able to have the retirement that they deserve, right? So I have done so many different roles in financial services. I started off doing underwriting. So actually accepting people for life insurance and disability insurance. I then moved on to claims management, and I did a lot of work around mental health claims and how do we try and reduce these, because I could just see that we were starting to have this real elevation of mental health claims coming through. Then I went from underwriting and claims management over to product management. Then I moved up to Brisbane about 20 odd years ago. And I started studying to become a financial advisor. And while I was studying my financial advising, I was also studying my psych degree at the same time, because I knew that I could apply my psychology, the psychological principles or the psychological insights into financial advising and also leadership. And then I did product management, and now for the last 11 years, I've essentially been running my own organisation. We do a lot of coaching, a lot of training, and a lot of leadership development and financial planning development as well. So that's kind of been that journey for the last 33 years, and the reason why I started and why I'm still so passionate about it now.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. I mean, 6 kids is crazy. I grew up one of 5, which is kind of crazy enough. But yeah, 6, and it's kind of super important. And some of the things I want to talk about today is about sales, and sales being a bit of a dirty word in a professional sense. We all want to be professions, and that interaction between selling is I've had my own journey, around kind of hesitations with sales and stuff. But help me understand. So you worked in products, so, underwriting, claims, product management, in advice. what was the kind of driver to then go and kind of move outside of that space and working with advisors directly in a coaching sense?
I love that question. And you know why? So when I was doing my psych degree, I was also a financial advisor at the time. And when I was studying my psych degree, there was a new psychological theory out that was called emotional intelligence. So this was in the 1990s. So emotional intelligence had only just been developed by a guy called Coleman. And I remember when I was studying my psych degree and learning all about emotional intelligence, that I could actually apply these principles within my client interactions. So I could actually go, right, how do I apply emotional intelligence for myself, but also how do I apply it with clients as well? So always with the right intention of helping, not selling. All right. So I'll say that really clearly. Like my goal was always, how do I help people, not sell to people? So I ended up really understanding that there was this new theory that financial advisors could learn and apply in order to actually connect with the people sitting in front of them. So I did so much study around emotional intelligence. And then from that, I was able to really, and throughout my extensive coaching and observing and training of financial advisors, I could really see what worked and what wouldn't. And I could see when really great financial planners were with clients and I was observing them, I could see that they followed a process. I could see that they took this client on a journey. And then I would sit in with good financial planners. So they still were good advisors, but they weren't as consistent as what the really great financial advisors were. And that was because they weren't applying that emotional intelligence as a lens over that client. And then I saw new financial planners that just came into the industry that had actually never even been taught how to actually take a client on a journey, what questions to ask, how do you ask it, when do you ask it, what level of depth do you ask it at. I really realized that you could actually apply emotional intelligence lens over your client interactions. And about 14 years ago, after researching and interviewing and observing hundreds and hundreds of financial advisors, I created a framework for financial advisors to be able to use a structured, consistent framework, still their own personality, still their own words, but a process journey map that they could take the client on with their clients and put that emotional intelligence lens over it. So for the last 14 years, I've been rolling out this framework to large corporates, large superannuation companies, banks, financial planning practices, boutique financial planning firms, as well as dealer groups, helping financial planners to have quality, meaningful conversations that truly connect with that human connection with clients.
Yeah, and the thing about sales and my journey as an advisor, being a young advisor, being talked about sales or, soft skills, there was always this kind of negative conversation in my mind of going like, are we selling just to make more money? And there's kind of a disjointedness. And I was at the MetLife Risk Retreat the other day and they were talking about like soft skills and selling, and the presentation was actually just like framing, how you frame certain things. So like, framing a weekly premium is going to be much better and you'll get much uptake than a yearly premium. And I asked the presenter, like, where does like framing come in or sales, like sales skills come in and then manipulation start, like, because it's a very interesting kind of interplay when we use the right words and when we communicate effectively. That's good sales and we're doing that under the best interest of the clients. But where does it go past that and go and turn into manipulation? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that from an advice point of view.
So what I hear you saying, what I hear you talking about there is sales skills, right? Reduce them monthly to weekly or daily. We used to do that a lot back when we used to sell direct marketing products for the cost of a cup of coffee, you can have $100,000 worth of life insurance. So I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about how do we reduce the pricing in order for it to sound more appetizing. What I'm talking about really is how do we have quality, meaningful deep conversations with our clients in order to build trust and intimacy. And when I say intimacy, I mean, what I really mean by intimacy here is that you understand the client's values, personal values, their beliefs, what is important to them, what is really critical that we as financial advisors can do to understand them, right? So my belief is always about how do we have connection, client conversations that truly connect with the needs of the clients. If you do that, you're never, ever going to sell to them. You're never going to manipulate them. You're never going to do anything other than go like, based on what you're telling me, based on your beliefs, based on your values, based on what's important to you from not only a financial perspective, but also from a financial advisor perspective, but also from a family and future perspective, then this is how our service or solution is going to help you.
Yeah, that's right. And just to be clear, that the presentation was about these techniques and how do we manipulate, but even just more broadly, like the reason why I'm so interested in this topic, because we've got professional year advisors, and one of the great benefits of our business is we have a lot of client meetings. So the team members get a lot of opportunities. And as leaders and advice leaders in our business, we do like assessments on our advisors, and all of our assessments is soft skills. So, as we were talking, I was opening up our kind of assessment to touch on it. So, the first one is active listening. And so we kind of rank the advisors on how well did you actively listen to the client. One thing I always say, did you hear the question that they weren't asking? Like, well, people ask a question. Yeah, people ask a question, but it's not really like, because they don't understand our world, they don't understand our jargon. You got to try and pull out what's the question that they're really trying to understand. The next thing is like empathy and understanding, effective communication, client education, problem solving, adaptability, emotional intelligence broadly, and then like conflict resolution is kind of the last thing. But even in those kind of things where it is all about like, we're so conscious about the words we use and the impact it, has on our client meetings. But even in my own internal assessments with our team, I always think about this line between how do we educate our clients, how do we make sure we are working in their best interest and not tip over to that manipulation side of things.
Yeah. So that's a good structure there. You've got there around some of those things. What I often find, it's how do they now apply that? So, whenever I'm coaching or training financial planners, especially around the frameworks that we use, we give them, well over 150 emotional questions, because emotional questions will really help them understand that client at a deeper level. So often I find a lot of financial planners will go, what do you want to do in retirement? I want to travel. I want to, visit Tuscany, and I want to, spend some time with my grandchildren. It's all really kind of like your normal answers to the questions that we get, right? Whereas what I really want financial planners to do is use their emotional intelligence to be able to ask those deeper, more powerful questions, such as, why is that important to you? What are your values? What are your beliefs? What is important to you about a financial planner? Why is that important to you? I want them to really, and how do you want to be educated? We only need to look at the different generations that we're going to have over the next 10 years, where we have this $15 trillion of wealth transfer being passed down from generation baby boomers right down to our generation X, Y, and Z. All of those have different beliefs. They have different values. So for me, it's how do we get financial advisors to be asking those deeper questions that are more relevant to some of those younger generations? Because there's real different insights, psychological insights that are different from our generations to our baby boomers. So what we've always done, we can no longer do with this newer generation. So mine is really around how do you really get to understand what is really important to the client so that we have a lifelong relationship with them, so that when the premiums get too high, okay, we're not looking to reduce it, but we're looking to understand more about what might be happening in their world, as opposed to, okay, some is better than none, let's just reduce it, right? If we know our clients intimately, then that's when we have this deeper relationship with them.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I just keep going back to this point in my mind of that, like, how do we, what is the mechanism or guardrails as professions? As a profession, what are the guardrails that we put on ourselves to make sure we are doing what's in the best interest of the client? And so insurance executives hate having a meeting with me because I just go on rants all the time about, some of the frustrations I have with them. And it happened yesterday when I was at lunch. I just went on 20-minute rant about some frustrations I'm having with But I keep on coming back to sometimes, in our business, we do stuff that's in the best interest of the client and it's not in our best interest and it's not in insurer's best interest. And is that okay? Do we need to think about it as a holistical, or more as a, holistically, because if it's not in the insurance company's best interest, long term, it may not be in the client's best interest. And so there is this push and pull, around kind of what that, overarching, thing looks like. And yeah, I just always come back to this, making sure our team and myself, when we are working with clients, we are not tipping into that, manipulating a client to do something that's not in their interest because we want them to. But also, there is this understanding that clients may not want to pay insurance premiums, and we know that clients on average, majority of clients don't claim on the insurance that they had. But the ones that do need it, and exactly your situation when you were young, that meant so much to your family. But we know there's, 95 other people who have those policies who just never need it, and they paid money and that money went down the drain. And so there is always this interesting thing when it comes to life insurance, knowing that I'm selling you a product that we hope the best case scenario is this is a waste of money.
Exactly. I think, I apply it. I think what I'm really hearing you say is it's somewhat a moral compass that sits inside of us, really, isn't it? Around, is there something happening for us that might actually mean that we have to stop and think about what we're doing for our client? I know you should have a guy called Tony Bevan on your podcast. He's been in the industry for a long time. He does a lot of leadership work and a lot of compliance work, but he's been in the financial services industry for a long time. I've worked very closely with him over the years. And he talks about, from not only from a leadership perspective, but from a company perspective, that, one of our pillars of business is also about that ethical stance around, the people ethics, making sure that we're doing the right things from us, but also the right things from the client. And he believes that when we develop our people around that space, then we're always going to have a really strong business because we're doing things the right way. And he applies it very much from a leadership perspective as well.
Yeah, and it's so, I just keep thinking about my examples. And look, to be honest, the reason I do this whole podcast is so I can get better as a leader and I hope other people get value out of it, but it's all about how do I get value out of it.
Wow, I heard that on the Fun in Your podcast and I was like, yep, you're telling it as it is.
Yeah. And so the way I think about it in my business, in insurance, so the industry sometimes gets the answer and then goes, how do we justify that answer? So, a good example is how do we move someone from an industry super fund insurance into a retail policy?
Yeah.
And one lens, as negative as possible, is, well, you're doing that to get paid a commission. And then the other lens is, well, the policies are much more robust and there's plenty of reasons to do it. And so there's, in our business, when we've got new team members and we try and talk about, don't try and find the answer is move to a retail policy. Let the data tell us what the answer is instead of going, hey, we want to move them or whatever the case is. So, and a new team member who'd had work from another firm, I just want to make sure that, let's not squint our eyes to push them into a retail policy. If where there are and the policies there are at the moment is better, or they should increase where they are. Always come from a lens of, always try and think of it as, if I was to advise my brother or my sister or my mum or my dad, how would we react? How would we behave? Because the money will come. We'll make it work. It's just a matter of how do we always have that lens of, if we could truly think that we are doing what's best for the client, even if it's selling a policy that's $5,000 a year, then as long as we're comfortable that we think we're putting them in the best, we're doing the best interest in them, then we can sell and we can communicate in a way that, isn't manipulating, but is encouraging them to do what is in their best interest.
Yes, yeah, yeah. And I think that'll always be a dilemma for financial planners because, we've all grown up in such different environments with different parents, with different friends, with different cultures, with different countries, right? So those get very easily blurred, don't they? In some countries it's okay to do that, whereas in some others it's not. Sometimes you were brought up to have really strong values. So I think that's where I'm often working with financial planners around what are your values and how do we apply that emotional intelligence lens over those conversations so that you always can sleep right at night knowing that you've given that right advice.
Mm. And so we're talking about like emotional intelligence and sales. I want to kind of move into leadership as well. You talked about how, making sure we are leading well. And so I guess I want to talk about leadership in two aspects. So how do we show good leadership to our clients? Because I think that is such a fundamentally important part of advisors' roles. And then, in an organization, if we have people, who we are serving and reporting to us, how do we lead them well? So I guess let's start on the leadership to clients. What are you seeing advisors doing really well in that space? And where do you see maybe whether it's new advisors or advisors who, may not have worked on their emotional intelligence, where are they falling over when it comes to, showing that leadership to clients?
Yeah, it's a big question, right? So I might start off with is over the years, and especially over the last 10 years, leadership has become so much more complex than what it ever used to be. We, when I first started in business, it was very much a command and control. I tell you what to do and you do it. Whereas what we've really identified over the last 10 years, and especially over the last 5 years since COVID, is that it's no longer, people don't want you to lead in a command and control style. They want you to lead with empathy. They want you to lead with collaboration. They want you to lead with trust and understanding. So what I will say and what I see often is so many people are put into a leadership role because they're good technicians, good practitioners, good at what they do. Then all of a sudden someone's put them in a leadership role and it's like, oh my God, how do I now lead the people, right? I have a background in psychology. People are complex, right? We're asking people that don't have a background in this to get everyone in the team on the boat and rowing in the same direction. What we also know about leadership is that there's around approximately, depending on the kind of research that you look into, 26 different core competencies that really determine whether or not you are a highly successful leader. So then we wonder why so many people struggle with the people and the leadership side of it as well. So what I often see from that perspective is when you think about those 26, say, different competencies, I see people being really strong in some of them. So they might be strong in communication, they might be strong in visionary or innovation or change management or accountability or whatever it might be, but they might not be strong in other areas. So often what I'm doing is working with leaders around how do you identify where your strengths are and where your opportunities for growth are. Where I see really great financial planners in leadership with their clients specifically is they're really great at communication, right? Really understanding the different types of communication that their clients need. Now, if you think about this, whether or not you're in a financial advising role or whether you're in a leadership role, we are now leading 4 different generations of people, right, within our businesses, 4 different generations. Never in history have we led 4 different generations. And the younger generations are so much more demanding. And what I mean by that, not demanding as in
pain in the asses is not what you mean. I'll say the words. You don't have to.
But I mean demanding in the sense is they want to learn, they want to grow, they want to move to that next role. They really want more from their leaders. They want flexibility. They want different things from their leaders. So the same thing is true with our clients. So really great financial planning leaders understand their clients. They understand how they want to be communicated with. They understand how they want to be educated. Right. Again, I see so many practices where they send out one newsletter and they educate on every different topic and they wonder why they don't get a lot of engagement because they're trying to do a one size fits all. Whereas the really great ones, they're innovative. So they're really starting to think about what do my future clients need. Again, maybe for many advisors now, their future client isn't the Generation Y and Z. Might not even be the X, it might be the baby boomers. But over the next 10 years, that's going to shift. So really great financial planners are really starting to think into the future. They're innovative. They're starting to think about what those future clients might be. They're really good at change management. One of the things that I think our industry is good at is change, right? We're constantly being challenged with the changes that what we've got. So those really great leaders is they know how to lead change. They know how to inspire change. They know how to create desire in their clients as well as their people. And I think they're good at accountability. They're good at really making sure that their clients are delivering what they need to deliver. So if you've got to go and have a medical, if you've got to get a doctor's report, if you've got to provide us with information, they're really good at holding their people accountable. So there's some of the traits or the characteristics that I see that really great financial planning leaders are really starting to apply. And collaboration is probably another thing. How are they collaborating with their clients? How do their clients actually, do they want webinars? Do they want seminars? Do they want, a once a month, a session where you call in a few speakers and you run that? They're really good at being collaborative as opposed to just individually focused.
I'm leading a bigger team now, so I think about leadership a lot, and that's kind of most of my work at the moment is actually just growing and developing as a leader. But I think one story I always remember when I was relatively new in advice, I remember getting a really wealthy client, and wealthy for my standards. And we did a plan. I did a plan, and I saved this guy like $30,000 a year in tax every single year, just from like moving things around. It wasn't like the most amazing piece of advice, but it was good advice. I was so stoked because that was more than half my income that I'd save for guy a year. And so I went to the advice meeting getting so excited to be like, hey, we've restructured things and done it. So we're saving $30,000 a year in tax. And, we moved money to a pension. And so, a pension, you've got to pull money out of the account every year. And I remember to this day, his main concern was not the tax saving. He was a simple guy, had more money than he ever needed, didn't want to spend any money. His biggest concern was, now I've set up this pension, I've got to pull money out of the account. Every 12 months, I've got to have $60,000 going into my bank account. And he's like, what do I do with that $60,000 a year? I don't need it. I don't want to spend it. I'm thinking to myself, the headline thing is we've saved you heaps of money, not the fact that you've got money in your bank account. Let's focus on the good side. And it was just a really interesting thing that as an advisor, I was focused on the technical side of it and going, I've done great advice from a technical point of view and a net benefit to your overall position. And his focus was, this money is now going to hit my account, and that's my biggest worry. And he literally had like $1 million sitting in cash in his bank account. So $60,000 extra a year wasn't going to, cause an issue, or there was no worried about it. But it was just this interesting thing of going like, technical competency is the ticket to the game in advice. You've got to be good technically competent.
Of course, it's the foundation.
But when it comes to your advice engagement, it's all about like, being empathetic, having this emotional intelligence, and showing leadership to these to our clients. That I always remember that's like, I may think something's super important, but to the understanding what is important to the client was my takeaway from that.
And this is, again, where I'm often working with financial planners to reflect on some of those moments. So, that was a moment where you had you delved deeper into really understanding what was important to them and why that was important and all of that, then you would have found that out. I'll never forget a moment when I was sitting with two clients and they had three of their children. Their children were just playing on the office floor, and I was sitting down with both the husband and the wife, and they were South Africans, and he had come here to Australia and he started a really big stationery company. And I remember sitting down with him and saying to him, while the wife was there, right, so in the event that you die, how much does your wife need, right? And he said to me, she'll be right. She'll get married again. And I just remember going, and he was joking, it was funny, but it wasn't, right? It was kind of a little bit real. And I ended up stopping and I went, oh my God, I've actually asked the right question to the wrong person. Okay. So I then went, oh, sorry, I've asked the right question just to the wrong person. And I asked it to her and she said, well, I'm going to need a good over $1 million, right? So it's these moments where this is, again, this opportunity with emotional intelligence that you're self-aware, you're really aware of who you are and what are those interactions and what you would do differently next time in order to learn and grow from that. And that's the whole purpose of emotional intelligence, is to apply that foundation, but then actually use it in the future. Most of the time, the financial planners can be getting so busy that they're on to the next one, or they're doing the file note, or they're, doing all the other 100 tasks that they've got to do, as opposed to stopping and going, what really worked with that client? What didn't? What would I change and what would I do differently next time? That's true leadership there too, Phil, right?
Yeah, and I kind of want to go back to a point that you made, actually, because I just want to unpack it a little bit. You said young people want more these days. They have higher expectations, and it's. I said they're pain in the asses. You didn't say that. And so I get my question. My question to you is is that a good thing that we're seeing, or is it a negative? Is it something that we need to course correct and lead younger people into going, actually, maybe this is the right expectation balance? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, what I really think, and about 5 years ago, I developed a people leadership program because I realized that there was a lot of leadership programs out there that taught you how to run a business. They taught you how to develop a strategy. They taught you how to be compliant. They really taught you about setting up your processes and your administration and your operations, but they didn't really teach you how to lead people. Right. And people people get the strategy, don't they? I go into organizations all the time and they give me their strategy in order to help them deliver. And I look at the strategy, I say, this is great. How are you going? And they go, well, the people are not on the bus, Kylie. Right. So we can have the best strategy, but without the people with us, we're never going to achieve the strategy. So I ended up teaching and really developing leaders on how to lead the people. Okay, how do we get the right people in the right roles doing the right things? How do we really inspire them and engage them and drive them to be who they want to be? So is it right or wrong? I don't think it's a yes or a no. I think what I really see leaders needing to do is to be more agile and adaptable with their leadership, because I don't think that generation Y and Z, or even X to a certain extent, will change their values and beliefs because it doesn't fit what we used to have. So I really believe that if we can help leaders to be more agile, adaptable, have the right tools, have the right resources, have the right frameworks in order to be able to lead those people, then that's a great thing, because those younger ones, they pick up things faster. They're more digitally savvy. They're more aware of where they want to be and what they want to do. So to me, that's a good succession plan in place as well.
Yeah, and I guess the kind of the way I'm thinking about it is do we change our leadership style to cater for the younger expectations? Or do we lead those younger team members to bring them on a journey to understand maybe lead them to adjust their expectations? I guess is something I think about in my business. We've got young team members and we want to continue to develop young team members. And so I agree with you. I think it is potentially harder to lead younger people. And I'm trying to come at it as going, do I lead them well and go, hey, this is the expectation of Sky and this workplace, and bring them on a journey to understand kind of what the expectation is? Or do we kind of change our frameworks and our leadership styles to kind of cater for that kind of, cultural experience that they're having? And do you get kind of what I'm saying? Do I bring them along, lead them to come along? Or do we go, actually, let's just lead to where you are?
No, I actually think we should be leading with clear expectations in place. So I remember starting in the industry where we used to have, and it wasn't called graduate programs, but essentially that's what my CEO was putting me through. He was putting me through a graduate program, a succession plan. So it was like, you need to learn this, then you need to learn that, then you need to learn that in order for you to be that. So I think it's the same when, whenever we're onboarding people within our team, or whether or not I'm working with organizations to help them around team structure, it is, how do we make sure that we've got a really clear training matrix around what do we need each of our people to know, and then how do we develop them in that space so that they go, right, in order for me to be a senior financial advisor or a financial advisor, I must go through these steps. A little bit like, within organizations when they can only advise on certain strategies until they've actually done the training to do those certain strategies. So a little bit like that. So I think we do have to set some clear expectations, like you're saying, Phil, but bear in mind as well that each people will go through that journey differently, right? From that knowledge to ability, there's that space in between that some people will be able to do it really fast and some people will be a little bit slower, right? It's how do we help them, take them through that journey. I don't know, they're here to stay. So it's as leaders, it's how do we make sure that we've got the best people and we're supporting their dreams as well.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. Kind of where we're at is going, we want to develop young people and we just want to be very clear on our culture and our expectations at Sky and be very clear that, hey, this is our expectations and you may not be there yet, but we want to grow you into what we expect. And unfortunately, if you're not going to get there, we want to be very clear, hey, we don't think you're going to get there, or we think it's going to take you longer. And, there's another podcast, Challenging the Standards. They're doing a whole kind of a series about professional year advice, because that's a really interesting kind of journey and relatively new framework in our industry as to, leading young people into the profession, as you talk about those graduate-ish programs. And we've done a lot of work at Sky about that. So I just want to understand, what is the work that you're doing at Performance Advisory Group? So, what are you doing with financial advisors and licensees and corporate?
Sure. So I'll split it into two ways because I think it's really easy to explain it in that way. Our very first core part of our business is people leadership development, right? So that is, how do we help the leaders to be really successful in leading themselves, leading teams, and then leading into the future. And as I said before, so many people are put into a role and they've never had any kind of formal training or education in that space. And they're kind of learning through that observational. So we do a lot of leadership development. And we do that through our public programs, or we do that through licensing, where companies can buy our programs. And if they've got an L&D or they've got BDMs or they've got area managers, then they can then go and deliver those programs to their leaders within the organisation, depending on the size of it. So it's a lot of leadership development, because I don't think that you can have a great sales team without great leadership. It really does start with there. The second part of our core business is really around helping financial planners to be able to have quality, meaningful conversations with their clients that are consistent, so that they are actually truly understanding the generational needs. They're asking the right questions to the right level in order to really engage and retain those clients long term. And that really does incorporate a lot of sales training, but a lot of interpersonal skills and a lot of emotional intelligence as well. So really developing that space.
Yeah, cool. I mean, one thing we talk about at Sky is, if you move into a leadership position, we don't call it a promotion. We call it a role change, because, we've worked with leadership coaches and we still work with the leadership coach. And it's so much, it's just been my experience. When people move into leadership and see it as a promotion, they move there because they're technically competent. That's not the case. So we, and the reason we call it a role change is because we want to make it very clear that just because you move into a leadership position doesn't mean that you're the most technically competent or you're the most successful in that role, because often you may not be the case. But we want you to have a role change, because leadership in our business, we talk about leading is serving people. And so if you have that service mindset, moving into leadership, you're going to be successful in that role. And touching on, leadership, we do CPD points, 40 hours of CPD points a year, and none of it is on communication or leadership or there is a client care component, but it really doesn't very often touch on actual leadership development. So I think services like yourselves are super important for advisors to really think about, actually, let's develop ourselves as a leader. Even if we're not leading people, we're leading our clients. If you're a client-facing advisor, you're leading your clients. You've got to understand and develop those skills because, in my view, it's actually more important than your technical competencies. Like, you should know all the stuff you're advising on, but how you communicate is super important.
Yeah, exactly. I think, what I'm often saying to financial planners or leaders is communication is the foundation, right? Without great communication, nothing great happens. So it's how do you help them to actually communicate in a way that really connects with the client that's in front of them. And what I think we'll see is, the PY advisors that are coming through, they are great technically, but many of them don't know how to have that structured, consistent conversation because no one's ever trained them. Or they might have sat in, Phil, on a couple of meetings. I know when I was a financial advisor, I always had new financial advisors coming in, sitting in on my meetings with me so that they could learn and grow and be coached in those spaces. But there was only one person that they were observing or two people. So are they actually picking up the right things or are they just picking up what actually works for their advisors? So I think what we do is helps client financial advisors to have quality conversations, but bring that own authenticity to it, but gives them that structure so that they feel confident because that's what it's about. It's about helping financial advisors, financial planners to feel really confident when they're with their clients so that they can bring that confidence to their interactions as well.
Yeah, I agree. And you're kind of giving a pitch why people should join Sky because our PYs jump in on like 5 or 6 advisors meetings and then they're running heaps of meetings, so they just get the volume of practice. And so I appreciate that endorsement for people to join Sky. So how do people get in touch with you?
Well, they can get in touch with me through LinkedIn, so Kylie Denton under LinkedIn, or they can reach out to us on our website, which is performanceadvisorygroup.com.au.
Amazing. And last 2 questions. What is one interesting hobby that you have?
One interesting hobby. Okay, I'll give you one. I read a good 25 books a year, and I'm always saying that if I'm not growing myself, then I can't grow others. So I really absolutely love reading. It's probably something that is just been ingrained in me ever since I was little, just that lifelong learner.
Yeah, awesome. I've had a goal this year to read 20 books, and I'm a little bit away from the target, but probably I'm like 15 books in, maybe, or maybe not even that much. But the reason I did that is because some of the smartest, richest, wealthiest people in the world are avid readers. So if they've got time to read, then I should find time to read.
Absolutely. And so I'm up to 18 this year. So I've got 7 left to go, but I've got a lot of travel coming up in November for work. So I know that I'll be able to read when I'm at the airport or in the hotel rooms. So that, it's such a powerful tool to be able to use as a leader, but also to be able to communicate with your clients as well.
Yeah, we've started a book club. We've kind of gone on and off, but we're doing it properly at Sky. So we've got 8 of us who come together once every fortnight to talk about the books that we're reading. Yeah, so that's good. And the last question: when do you get a chance to do your emails?
Well, I have an EA. Okay, so I'm very, very lucky. So he does manage a lot of my inbox and my calendar. I'm not allowed to manage my calendar anymore. It's way too complex for me. But emails are done for me. And again, I coach and develop leaders around time management and energy management. So they're done first thing in the morning. They're done just before lunch, and then they're done overnight time. Okay. And then sometimes I'm a really early riser. I'll do a quick check of emails before I go and do some exercise at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Kylie. I really appreciate you taking the time to come and basically doing a one-on-one session with me. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me, Phil.
Awesome. Thanks.
If you've enjoyed this episode and you think someone else will get value out of it, I'd love it if you could forward it on to them. And as always, we can continue the conversation in the My Risk Advisor Facebook group. All you need to do, open up Facebook and search My Risk Advisor, and I'll see you in there.